everyone. I'm Erica Desper of Confident Parenting, and myself and my team, we help families get more sleep. Whether you have a young baby or an older child or anything in between, we can help. But today I am not here to sell you on our services. This is a PSA to help everybody understand what is going on with this additional recall for inclined sleepers, such as the rock and play. To me, first of all, I have to say something because I was one of those parents. So realize that there is absolutely no judgment in this video or this advice. If you are still using something for your baby to sleep in that is not a flat crib or a bassinet, I feel you. My son is 12 years old now, but I've never forgotten how difficult of a sleeper he was and how particular he would only sleep on me, with me, occasionally in a device. I didn't have anybody to help, and we didn't have all this information. And fortunately, he's okay. But here's the bottom line, parents. Babies are dying in these devices. And the fact that parents are still using them does not tell me that they're not intelligent, right? It tells me that there's a disconnect between the information and reality. So that's the purpose of this video. I want to make sure that you understand the reason behind the recall, and then also what your alternatives are. I think that there's either a lack of understanding or a lack of like, okay, but what do I do instead, right? So that's what I want to talk about today, is how to help you ditch that dangerous, and we can actually say deadly, inclined sleeper. So first, the statistics. Before the original recall, there were 73 deaths of babies. And I know this stuff is hard to hear and hard to think about, so I'm just going to get through it quickly. There were also 1,000 incidents, some of which included serious injuries. Since that recall, there have been 70 more fatalities. So what happens when a parent hears that? What do we say to ourselves that allows us to keep using it, right? So some of the things I know that parents say is like, well, it's only the Rock and Play brand by Fisher Price, and I have the whatever brand by whoever. And so it's, specific to that one thing. Realize that we are talking about any device or container, I should say, that puts your baby at an elevation or an incline over 10 degrees, which is pretty slight, okay? So we're talking about any incline sleeper, any rocker sleeper. We're even talking about strollers, car seats, swings. Now, obviously, you have to be in the car sometimes, and you have to take your baby in the stroller sometimes. You're just going to be keeping a close eye on them, and if they fall asleep, you're going to be transferring them to a flat surface at the first opportunity. What we're talking about is not leaving them in there for long periods to sleep or intentionally using it to make sleep happen. So just understand that distinction there. So it is not specific to just one brand. Other things that parents will say to themselves is, and actually the Consumer Safety Product Commission tested all of the brands and concluded that none of them were safe for sleep. So that's an important misconception. Some of us say to ourselves, well, it's only newborns, right? They're small, they're weak, and my baby is not a newborn anymore. Some of the babies are older, so realize it's not necessarily just for the very young babies that we're talking about. Some say, well, my baby would have to be old enough to roll over and be face down in the device. Not necessarily true. Many of these babies were correctly positioned. And the final thing I hear a lot is like, well, maybe those parents didn't strap their babies in, and we always strap our baby in. But again, many of the incidents occurred. It was being used properly in that they were well positioned and strapped in, but not properly in that it was being used for sleep. So just any of the things you might be saying to yourself that make it seem like it isn't dangerous, just realize that it really, really still is. And I don't say that to stress you, simply to inform you so then we can figure out, what to do instead. So there really is no debate over whether we should continue to use them. But I want to answer the question of how in the world do I stop? You probably didn't set out to use this as a sleeping device for your baby. It's probably for lack of alternatives. And I don't think it's helpful for experts to say, stop doing A, B, or C, and then not tell you what comes after that. So let's talk about that. First thing, I mean, honestly, if you walk away with anything, I would say get rid of them. If you don't have them, you can't use them and you won't be tempted, and it really isn't worth it. I get how important sleep is, and I know how hard it is to get enough of it, but look, if something happened, would it have been worth it? No. So just get them out of your house, then you won't be able to fall back on them, and you and baby will have to find an alternative. But let's say that you can't immediately jump to that. Then I would say at least make the shift to move from unsupervised sleep in those type of devices to using it for supervised sleep. And what do I mean by that? If you yourself are sleeping or so busy, so tied up that you can't check very frequently on your baby, that's unsupervised sleep. So if you want to pop them in there during the day when you're right there and you have an eye on them, I can't say that that is safe, but I can say that it is safer than using it overnight when you're sleeping yourself or for a long stretch when you're otherwise occupied. If you want to use it to make sleep happen and then transfer them to a safe surface, that's another way to kind of start to move away from it. So I would say your most ideal is just get them out of there and let's figure out something else. But if you feel like you need to sort of step it down, be aware that there are ways to make it less risky, which is not the same as taking away all risk. Another thing I would think about is, why does your baby sleep better in those devices? One factor is usually coziness. Anything that has a bucket, like a rocket play or swing car seat stroller, they like how tightly nested in they feel, right? Even when we aren't even thinking about the incline yet. So if your baby's sleeping all free and breezy in a big open flat crib or bassinet, that's a sharp contrast to being really nested into a device. So is there a way to create that for them in the crib or the bassinet on the flat surface? Some of our babies love Merlin's Magic Sleep Suit, the Zippity Zip, depending on the age. If they're younger, there's lots more options. The Woombi, there's a million of them. I can put some links in this video, in the comments of this video. So don't expect a baby to go from I'm all nested in this device to like I'm all free and breezy, in the crib. Try to think of safe ways that have been safety tested, to help make that open space feel a little more closed in. If they absolutely need an incline, realize that an incline that is less than 10 degrees is safe. I can never say that anything is 100% safe. We are trying to avoid anything that's 10 degrees or above, and most of the incline sleepers place your baby between 10 to 30 degrees. So if you want a really, really low elevation of a couple degrees, you can put something under the legs of the crib, at the head end. But again, we're talking about just bring it slightly off a flat. And or you can like roll up a towel and put it under the mattress. But again, we're trying to stay as close to flat as possible. And the reason for that is that babies' heads are heavy and their necks are weak, and we don't want the chin to rest on the chest, which is what it will typically do when we factor in those two things. Their airway is teeny tiny, so if it gets crimped, the airflow is not the way that we need it to be, and that's what happens with elevation. So flat is best. If you need to do a tiny, tiny elevation just to get them used to being closer to flat and then move to flat, that may be something that you can do. So think about wearing something, maybe making it a little bit. Sound obviously can be very helpful. Some of these devices have a sound feature. You can just get a sound machine and use that instead. You don't need to use the device to get the sound. Another issue is that a baby will often fall asleep in our arms, and then when we try to transfer them to the flat surface, they wake right up as we're transferring or very shortly after. So how do we avoid that? We're often using devices because the motion can override that and make it work. One way to make a smoother transfer is to have their arms contained. The younger they are, the more that they will startle themselves. So all the things we just talked about may help make your transfer work better. If you have a newborn, they're in the first 3 months, try waiting at least 10 minutes and looking for signs that they've moved from a light sleep, like eyes moving rapidly behind the lids, to none of that happening. That's one sign that they're moving into a deeper, slightly deeper zone where your transfer may take a little bit better. You can also watch their breathing. If it's rapid, shallow, it may be too soon to move them. If it slows down and it's deeper, it may be safer to move them. So for young babies, you might just be careful when you transfer. For older babies, that may not work as well. Once they're out of the newborn stage, it may actually be a matter of helping them recognize that feeling of, I'm going into the crib, it is flat, I am being placed on my back, and that's not an emergency. It's something I recognize because we've done it many times, and it's something that, someone helped me get used to. So oftentimes as they get older, it's about familiarity and getting rid of the preferred way to sleep so that the crib is the only way to sleep, and it's not a matter of preferences. That does sometimes require some form of sleep learning. Some would call it sleep training, which is what we help families with, but that's for another topic. We can help with that. The final thing I would say is just if none of these things work and you're still really stuck, we still want to protect your baby. So consider a safer alternative. I'm often asked what I think of the SNOO. If you're not familiar with it, go look it up, SNOO. It is a bassinet, and it gets your baby sleeping safely on their back. But it's way safety tested, right? Like, I'll let them sell themselves. You can just go check out all the information. What I have mixed feelings sometimes about it because it can be hard to wean from down the road, but let's make sure your baby gets down the road, right? And then we'll deal with that. So I love that it keeps them flat, which is safe. I love that it keeps them swaddled, which is usually helpful. It does have a sound feature. They do give you a protocol for how to wean down the road, or again, someone like us, we can help. And I do like that it prepares them for the flatness of the crib when it's time to make that transition. You used to have to purchase it. Now you can actually rent it, and I think that makes it far more accessible to far more families. And that is a much safer alternative. So I hope that this kind of clears up some of maybe the misconceptions that are floating around. And I hope that it gives you some ideas of things you can try to get rid of these dangerous sleepers. If you need help, please reach out to somebody. Your baby can learn to sleep in the crib or on some other flat surface that is safe. You might just need a little support to figure out how to approach it and how to get through it. And you can definitely reach out to us, or there's a lot of amazing sleep coaches out there. Reach out to anybody. We also have a free private group where you can come and ask questions. I'll pop that link in too in case you want to join us there on Facebook. So just be aware, this is really, really, really important, and not something to just sort of glance at and move on with your day. So make a plan. If you're still using one, figure out today what you're going to do to move away from it. And I hope that this helps. Let's keep our babies sleeping safely. Thanks for watching.